And we are live with the podcast for all seasons. This is the premiere episode of season 4, and we have a special guest with us today, Kenshiro, our friend Keenan from the Culture Junkies. With me, as always, is my co-host of the show, Mr. Eric Joseph. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit of callback to our "We Need to Talk About Batman versus Superman" episode, where we were getting a lot of bad blood for that movie. Some of it apparently deserved after the release, but we were getting a lot of bad blood based on a lot of speculation. A lot of the things turned out to not be true. Some of the things turned out to be true. So it gives us a little bit of an insight into what today's show will be about, which is The Batman, tentatively titled The Batman, the upcoming, at least supposedly upcoming, DCEU title. And we're going to be going over some of the rumors, some of the speculations, but we're going to try to keep it mostly on some of the things that have been confirmed and more or less whether or not some of the so-called hubbub about the movie is an indication of a greater problem within the Warner Brothers DCEU properties. But Eric, I'm going to let you get started, introduce our guest in full, let him kind of get going, and tell the folks how you've been doing.
I've been very busy. That's why we don't do this show as often anymore. As I said in our last episode, I'm very busy with my new position as comic book managing editor over at We Got This Covered. There's a lot that comes with that, but I still like to find the time to do these podcasts every now and then. But yes, we're going to talk a bit about the Batman and a little bit about this Nightwing movie that was, I guess you can call it, announced this week, even though Warner Brothers didn't technically say anything. But before I get off on a brief rant, let me welcome back to the show. This is his third appearance. Please welcome Kenshiro. How are you doing today?
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it. You know, I have no shortage of material to talk about this topic, because I've been talking about this very this very thing for probably like 4 or 5 years now, going back to our own show on Game. But you know what? I don't want to derail the show with my own thing. So let's get back to it, and let's fire away so I can actually go off on DC in general, because they deserve it in a way.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good segue into my rant of sorts here, because as we know, everyone in this conversation, not just Josh and I, Kenshiro too, we are all DC fans. We love DC Comics. We love these characters. Both these guys, their favorite character is Superman overall. Superman's my second favorite, of course. Obviously, I like Batman, and I look a little accusatory with the Joker picture I'm using for myself as my default Google image right now. So maybe it's a little appropriate, but it has to deal with this thing right now that there's this very fanboy view, and the fanboys, the totalitarian fanboys, are really getting on my nerves lately, because there's this thing going right now that if you don't agree with everything or like everything that's DC, you're just not a fan. Like, it's a matter of public record. I like Batman versus Superman. Some people give me flack for it, but I gave the Ultimate Edition a glowing review, on We Got This Covered when I did the Blu-ray review over the summer. But of course, I didn't give it a perfect score. There are things I dislike. One example is this, I believe this past week or two, I wrote an article about some concept art that's since come out of Doomsday, and he had more bone protrusions like the comic books. But in the article, I said, I like Batman versus Superman, but the look of Doomsday I thought could have been better. And I thought that Smallville, for the budget they had, achieved a look closer to the comics, which was prosthetics, but still. And basically, the admin in one group basically said for me to fuck off and watch Ant-Man instead. And I was like, hey, matter of public record, I hate that. I mean, I love Batman. Well, okay, I like Batman versus Superman, and I hate Ant-Man. But why does it have to be one way or the other? Oh, you obviously like Marvel. And yes, I have been accused of being part of a Marvel conspiracy. It's kind of...
Oh, the Marvel bias.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yes, I like both. I like DC and Marvel. I mean, I do prefer DC's characters. Certain characters and stories just resonate with people for, undefined reasons. You like who you like. But there's no reason we all can't just get along. But that's the thing. There's this term being thrown around called clickbait. And clickbait is a very real thing. It's when you have a headline or a featured image that deceives what the actual content is in your article. That's clickbait. Clickbait is not news that conflicts with your personal opinion. So if we report news that there might be trouble in the Ben Affleck camp in the DCEU, that's not clickbait. That just conflicts with what you believe. That it is our responsibility as journalists to report news, no matter if it's positive or negative. That is the news game. It's just, if you, the fact of the matter is that, okay, The Flash has already lost 2 directors, is undergoing a page 1 rewrite, and there's no way it's going to meet that March 2018 date, which they haven't reset yet, but we know they're going to do it at some point, if The Flash even gets a movie now. The fact that the Batman lost a director already, and don't believe the PR spin like, oh, I just needed to focus on the character. Because, okay, granted, the Batman is a bigger project than, say, Argo, The Town, or Live by Night. Ben Affleck knew what he was getting into as a writer, director, and actor on a project. This is not his first rodeo. So if I make an argument, don't counter me with a meme. That is just lazy, okay? The thing is here...
Yeah, I'm wondering how long this rant's going to go on at this point.
Not much longer.
Well, I wasn't sighing because of the rant. I was sighing because of the irony of it all.
Yeah, the Affleck had to drop out for a reason, and I think part of it had to do with Warner Brothers obviously wants to meet a date, which could be, summer 2018 or 2019, and Affleck's not thinking with a date in mind. And I also think, it was the constant prodding in interviews. Hey, how about Batman? How about the Batman? How about the Batman? And he just got sick of it. And we have to go back to the fact that he said he would not direct the movie if the script wasn't right. And then we find out Chris Terrio did a rewrite, which was rumored to be a little bit heftier than a polish. Now, it goes back to when Matt Reeves was said to have walked away from the project a week before he was confirmed to direct by Warner Brothers, that, cooler heads, they needed a chance to cool off. I personally thought it had to do with they weren't giving them enough creative control. Ken Shiro thought it had to do a issue. Honestly, it was probably a combination of both. But, one of the things in the report was that Warner Brothers said Batman's bigger than any one person, which is true, and the movie's getting made no matter what. But that makes me fear, because we've seen what it's like when Warner Brothers makes a movie no matter what. And we get things like Batman and Robin, Catwoman, Steel, and Jonah Hex. And that's my fear, because Bret Easton Ellis, of all people, a few months back, overheard some Warner Brothers execs at another table. And what dog in the fight does Bret Easton Ellis have? He's a novelist, okay? He overheard them saying that they heard the Batman script was bad and they didn't care because they just wanted it to make money. And that's the thing. If the movie makes a quick buck, it's going to make a quick buck, but it will tarnish Batman's reputation on film for a while. He's always going to come back like a cockroach. But the fact is, it could take another 8 to 10 years, like the gap we got between Batman Begins and Batman and Robin, and we just don't want that to happen. You want the best Batman film possible, so you can put a new one out every 3 years and stuff. Not every 6 months, which is, granted, not Batman solo films, but they're trying to put Affleck in as many movies as we can, which I know I'm not going to take the words out of Kenshiro's mouth because he has something to say later. But it's just my main concern that, yes, there is something going on behind the scenes, whatever we want to admit, and I want the Batman to happen. Batman's my favorite character. I want to see Deathstroke in the movie. I freaking love Deathstroke. Regular listeners of the show know that my default picture used to be me in a Deathstroke mask. But the fact of the matter is, until cameras are rolling, part of me is almost expecting this movie in this form to get canceled. Because if you don't believe me, reference Superman Lives and Justice League Mortal, which were about to start shooting, and then they were canceled. And beyond that, Warner Brothers has a proud history of canning superhero movies. I mean, just look at Superman Flyby, various, Batman Year One, Batman Beyond, many other projects. Too many to list here. I've listed them on Facebook. These two guys know. But if you're a fan of film trivia, you've known how many DC films have never made it to screen. So it's just the fact with me. We know Aquaman's happening, but the fact just because you name a director doesn't mean everything's going to make it. You could say, oh yes, Marvel has lost directors, and that's true, but they swiftly hired other directors and they made their release date. There's a big difference here. So anyway, okay, I'm going to pass it to Kenshiro first, since he's our special guest for this episode. So, Kenshiro, what do you think about the Batman? Does Matt Reeves as a director instill you with confidence? Do you think the movie will make it to screen? Because we know they were originally supposed to start rolling on this movie in the spring, and assumedly meet a July 2018 date. But do you think this is a 2018 or 2019 movie? Just empty that clip, man.
Well, thank you for the invite for me to empty the clip. I appreciate that. I will not pull any punches. But to answer your question first, do I think this is does Matt Reeves instill confidence in me? Yeah, he does. And the reason he does is because unless I miss my guess, he was behind the excellent what is it? Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I think it was the most recent remake of the Planet of the Apes movies. I know there was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Yeah. So he was behind that movie, and he's also behind the upcoming War for the Planet of the Apes. I'm a fan of those movies. I'm a fan of his talents as a director. So I have no qualms about him actually being able to do a really good job. Do I still think it's a 2018 movie? It could be. It depends on how fast they pull things together. Do I think they should do it? Yeah, I think they should. And here's my reasoning why. Because to coin a phrase from my good friend Megashawn, he always says, "Why is Batman old?" It makes no sense. He shouldn't be old. If you're going to squeeze as many movies out of the role as you can, then you need to get moving, because the Father Time is ticking on Ben Affleck. So I think that it behooves them to actually get at least one or two solo movies out of Ben Affleck before they have to recast the role, if they manage to last that long. But as a practical, going back to some of the things you were talking about in your rant there, talking about not just talking about the fans, because I think in their adherence to, it's a black and white thing. I think we could talk about that ad nauseum about how it relates to the current political landscape, and how the 45th president of our United States treats the media and says that, anything that doesn't match up with what his administration wants to put forth is all automatically dismissed as fake news, which is ridiculous. completely ridiculous. I mean, you can't play those types of games with media when people are reporting things, because if you're just wanting to only hear what you want to hear and remain in a bubble, then I don't know, it just makes you a little shallow. But I'm getting off topic here. Let's get back to the Batman. My problem with DC has always been, and I think I've said this numerous times over the years, is that they have a Batman problem, whereas they cannot seem to develop adequately beyond just Batman, and it's borne fruit with how much trouble they've had with Jonah Hex, how much trouble they had with Steel, how much trouble they had with anything that didn't star or cameo Batman. I mean, hell, look at Justice League Dark, which was about magic and mysticism and monsters and creatures of the night. Batman really had no business being in that production, but there he was, front and center. Why? Because they have to rely on Batman. Because if it doesn't have Batman in it, they seemingly have no confidence that it'll make them any money or it'll generate any interest. When really, if they would just pull from the almost nearly 80 years of collective storytelling and character development, they would actually be able to pull something together and really be able to make it so that they could see that it's more than just Batman they have in their stable. This isn't Batman and his super friends. This is supposed to be the DC universe. It's more than just Batman. But getting back to what we're talking about, which is the Batman film, and the concerns about Matt Reeves walking away, the concerns about Ben Affleck walking away. I absolutely agree with you, Eric. Ben Affleck knew exactly what he was doing. When he took the challenge on of being, writer, actor, director on the Batman film. You're right. It's not his first rodeo. It's not the first film that he's actually written in, that he's written, acted, and directed in. I think that was Good Will Hunting. I think that was one of the first ones that he did, and he won an Academy Award for that. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's got loads of talent, and I thought when he dropped out of being the director of the Batman, it was a huge blow, because you had an Academy Award winning director, someone that is a comic book fan, someone that loves this stuff almost as much as we do, if not as much as we do, going to do this thing right, without studio interference. But here we go. Ben Affleck drops out, and you could argue that he dropped out because, of personal issues. Obviously, sadly, he and his wife, Jennifer Garner are now getting a divorce, even though they've been separated for a while. But, that's got to weigh heavily on him a little bit. So, yeah, you could think it maybe that has something to do with it. But I choose to think that it might be because Warner's getting in the way. It's been well noted that Warner Brothers interferes in a lot of their projects, and it kind of rubs directors the wrong way, especially when it comes to these types of projects. When Matt Reeves walked away, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, I think, when he walked away, like you said, you argued that it was because Warner Brothers wanted creative control. I could see that. I also thought it was because it was money. I could see that too. And like you said, it's probably a combination of both. It probably was a combination of both. But I would stick to my guns and say that I'm pretty sure Warner Brothers did not relinquish creative control. They just said, okay, here, we can't really find another good, competent director. We need to save face. So we'll go ahead. We'll pay you your money and just come on and do this script. So I haven't, I'm not going to derail the show and keep it from being about the Batman, because I could certainly go in a whole bunch of other directions. But Josh, what do you think about all the developments as far as, the Batman and Matt Reeves? Do you think that this thing will still get made, as Eric's saying that, maybe it might not get made at all? What do you think?
I'm pretty confident that, yes, the movie's going to get made. Obviously, it has ran into some troubles. And I think that a lot of it is part speculation. I think that other parts of it are, things that people get a general idea, who aren't necessarily in the industry, but people get a general idea of the way that the industry truly does work, who keep their ear to the ground, the way that you guys do in the junkies. I know you guys got a lot of movie aficionados over there, and people who kind of really pay attention to things that are actually happening in the trades. And you're listening to the reports from the people who are in those fields. Eric does the same. I do it is a little bit as well, but not nearly as much as I'd say Eric. But at the same time, I think that some of it's probably been a little overblown. I'm not one of those guys who's going to say, yeah, anything that I disagree with is, AKA fake news or AKA clickbait. I do think that that's a little absurd. I will say this though, and the one way that I disagree with kind of Eric's take on it, and maybe your take on it as well, is yes, there is a difference between clickbait, where you're posting, basically salacious or inaccurate or non-factual articles with a header that seems like it indicates something else. I mean, there's that, and then there's a story that you don't like. But I will say that there does seem to be this extreme propensity, specifically with regards to the DCEU. I think that it's gotten to a point that people, there is the fanboy element. I don't think that there's some vast anti-DC, pro Marvel conspiracy necessarily. Do I think that Disney has a really strong reach? Do I think that they influence the minds and positions of people who are making stories? Yeah, and maybe that has something to do with some of the overt negativity that goes out towards the DC films, but it's not some overarching conspiracy. I think that that's a little absurd. But what I do notice is that obviously, and it's not clickbait, but hot button issues get more clicks. And if you post a story where it indicates, oh, hey, there might be some troubles on the Batman front, like, oh, Ben Affleck said he was upset that reporters kept asking him about a movie that's unrelated to the movie that he's out doing pressers for. Like, it gives the indication, it gives the overarching indication that he's frustrated. Well, he might not be frustrated with the Batman at all. He might not be frustrated with being Batman at all. He might be frustrated where it's like, yeah, I'm making a movie. I'm trying to get an Oscar nomination, or I'm trying to have this movie be an Oscar contender. I'm really out here doing pressers for my film that is in no way related to this one that you keep asking me about. And he's just annoyed. We know that Ben Affleck is an infamous hothead. I mean, he's not Alec Baldwin level hothead, but we know that he's got a short temper. He said as much, that he kind of put his anger into the character of the Batman. Is probably why he was so damn convincing as the Batman in Batman versus Superman. I mean, I believe that Ben Affleck's probably a frustrated, angry guy in real life. I mean, just look at him, for God's sakes. So that's kind of my take on it. I do think that there is an overt amount of kind of what you could call negative press, even on things that aren't indicators of specifically negative things, like the stupid, Ben Affleck's upset that people keep asking about the Batman. Again, yeah, because he's fucking trying to, do his press on a completely unrelated film, and you need to kind of give him his space to do that. I'm sure that he's not the only actor who's dealt with that. You name any actor who's been in a popular film, or a popular series or something like that. So if Jon Snow, I'm sure the actor who plays Jon Snow, Kit Harington, when he was in that really horrible Pompeo movie or whatever, I guarantee when he was trying to do press for that, people were asking him nonstop, oh, what's next season of Game of Thrones? And he was probably like, get the fuck out of my hair, man. Like, that's not what I'm here for. So I'm sure that it happens pretty frequently. But that's all I mean when I say things get a little bit overwrought. I don't think that they're clickbaity, but I do think that there is this inert need to press for the negative. It's not exclusive to the Batman or Ben Affleck or the DCEU. You see it all over the place. No one wants to hear news about some random person But then, you know, you hear some negative news, and yeah, it's on the front page of Yahoo. It's on the front page of MSN. Anyway, okay, so rant over about that. But as far as the Matt Reeves thing, I do think that me and Eric talked about it a little bit yesterday. I can't remember if we talked about it a little bit pre-show, but I think you're both kind of right as far as, you know, Eric kind of felt like it was probably something to do with creative control. You thought it was something to do with money. I kind of towed the line down the middle. I think it's very likely that it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's probably a combination of both. I do hope that it's the creative control thing is you know, does WB give up any type of creative control? You say no. You say no because WB is infamous for it. But how do you get Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban without WB giving up some creative control? How do you get a movie that was very, very formulaic? Chris Columbus had set a formula for those films that worked for the first two films, that worked with a young genre but led towards, you know, something that adults could enjoy, to what essentially was an art house film by Alfonso Cuarón for the third one.
Well, can I jump in and answer that? Actually,
yeah, absolutely.
Here's the reason why Warner Brothers gave up creative control on Harry Potter. They didn't own it. J.K. Rowling did. They just had the film rights. They didn't really own it. So if they wanted to stay true to what the owner had, like literally, I think, I'm not sure how it works, but if they betrayed the essence of what those books were, they would really, really hear about it. And I know a lot of people actually really knock the Harry Potter movies for not being like the books. I mean, hell, that happens all the time. It's always saying, "I'll read the book. The book's better." You know, that happens all the time. But I think in contrast, when Warner Brothers outright owns DC and owns everything with DC, I think there it gets a little bit different. It does that, if that makes any sense.
It's not a 100% you know, accurate analogy, but I mean, I'm sure that there are others, you know, several other examples that I can't specifically think of right now. It's not that yeah, I mean, you can even look at the tonal shift for the original Batman films. Why would they go from the well-received, now granted it had a lot to do with Tim Burton, but the original Batman films from the 89 series and on are all in some form of continuity. And so why go in a directorial direction of Joel Schumacher versus Tim Burton? I mean, I think that there's probably something where they're going, yeah, you know, make it your own, because how do you get such a tonal shift from the dark anachronistic?
Yeah, I can answer that in full. It's because Returns did not do as well as Batman 89 because Tim Burton is not necessarily a guy keen on doing sequels, and how they got him to come back was they said, okay, make Batman Returns a Tim Burton movie. And he very much did that, because you see he reinvented the Penguin, Catwoman, and so forth. And when it was deemed too dark and sexy for children, and it was never meant to be a children's movie, you know, it was a PG-13. But when they had to, you know, stop selling the Happy Meal toys because parents groups complained, and at the time, you know, the comic book movie climate wasn't what it is today. You know, they didn't know how to handle these things, and they're like, okay, Joel Schumacher, give us a family-friendly Batman movie. And Joel Schumacher did put his own flourishes on the franchise, but it's important, even bits that he had to do what the studio told him. And that's like after Batman Forever was such a hit, the studio's like, we have to go even more child-friendly. So, you know, then we got slide whistles and other ridiculous stuff. And Joel Schumacher has apologized for the movie. He said, I'm adult, I was awake. And he manned up and he said, I take full responsibility. But the fact is, you know, Joel Schumacher had total creative control. Let's be honest. The guy always wanted to make Batman Year One into a movie. And if we're talking, if it was 100% his baby, Batman and Robin is not the movie he would have made. And I just wanted to kind of reference something earlier, talking about clickbait. Like, I'll reference that Doomsday article again. In the headline, I said the concept art shows us a bonier version of Doomsday, and my featured image was Doomsday from the movie. My article delivered concept art of Doomsday. But just because I said I wasn't totally thrilled with how he looked in the movie, it was called clickbait. So that's when you get the difference from what people are saying. But, when it comes to, getting back to the Matt Reeves thing, I kind of think it might be best if they shoot for a 2019 date, because at this point you've got a new director on the project, and he might want to put his own flourishes on the script, and that might take a little time. But
I mean, here's the way I feel about that is, I mean, frankly, unless you have a significant amount of screenwriting experience, if you have former screenwriting experience and now you're a director, I just don't feel like, it's one thing to put your own visual flair on it. It's one thing to put your own, like, hey, give me a little smile here that might indicate something that the words and the script don't indicate. Give me a grimace here. That makes sense to me, but I don't know how I feel about, directors significantly making changes to scripts and things like that especially from someone who, I mean, he's got a decent track record. He doesn't have a gigantic plethora of films behind his back, but I think that if it's like, oh, hey, you're gonna rewrite this film, I don't know how I feel about that. I do know that, I mean, I've liked the movies that I've seen of his. I think that he's probably going to be a decent choice. He can do big action. He can do he can do intimate character development fairly well. Both of which I think he showed in Cloverfield.
I have to ask you guys. Didn't Ben Affleck and Jeff Johns write this Batman script? Yes or no?
I believe that they both worked on it. Yeah.
Okay, here's my problem. How can that be terrible? How could that deserve a rewrite? How can a Jeff Johns written, Ben Affleck written screenplay possibly be received as terrible?
See, that's the thing that makes me think. I agree with you. That was one of my very first questions. It's one of the things that.
Maybe they didn't get along and had other ideas.
It's Jeff Johns. Come on. Jeff Johns.
Yeah, Eric's point is valid, but I think that it's
Look who was brought in to do the rewrite. Chris Terrio.
I hear you, Chris Terrio, but isn't he like just he's a studio handman basically, or basically a studio cleaner, but it's like it's almost like default.
But it also doesn't make sense if here's the thing. If you've got problems with Chris Terrio's Batman versus Superman script, which is basically what led to, sorry about that, I got my dog barking. If you've got problems with Batman versus Superman and you want to make a tonal shift, or enough that we know that there was significant changes in the way that Justice League was being made, and now you want to make the Batman film, well, what was one of the best things about Batman versus Superman? Was Batman. They did Batman really, really well. I understand, Megashawn's question of why is Batman old, and my answer to always that is because that was the narrative that they were going with. They were going with the Dark Knight Returns Batman. That's the simple answer. From a future proofing perspective, you're absolutely right. He's got a time clock against his back, and therefore you're going to have very limited use from this character before you have to recast him. But we also say that with, Iron Man being now in a film playing the same character for almost 10 years, and being now 53 or something like that, Robert Downey Jr. But I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that if you've got two Oscar-winning screenwriters in Ben Affleck and Chris Terrio, why wouldn't you just say, okay, Ben can handle this. He's won his Oscar. He obviously knows the screenwriting game. Or instead of saying, oh, hey, well, give it to Chris Terrio, because nobody liked Batman versus Superman critically. So yeah, we'll have him polish a script that the most prolific comic book writer and this Oscar-winning screenwriter. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, which is why all these rumors, and a lot of them are rumors, a lot of them aren't confirmed. The whole page one rewrites, some of them are kind of, you have quote unquote industry insiders talking about it, and you've got people talking about things like oh well, they had to have Chris Terrio publish the script because it was garbage, and Bret Easton overheard a conversation. Now again, what I agree with Eric, what dog does Bret Easton Ellis have in the fight that he would even mention it? Here's the other thing: you got two studio execs who are like, oh, I don't know, I heard the script was garbage, I don't know, they're sending it to Chris Terrio. Like, we don't know what context there is to that conversation. We don't know if those guys know their head from a hole in the wall, their ass from their elbow. So I mean, I take a lot of those you got a lot of these disparate rumor milling things going on, and it combines into what I was talking about earlier, where you have just this overt negativity that they keep pressing down, and it's like any potentially negative story, it's front page news on any comic book website. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily clickbait. They're just reporting these rumors, but I think things are getting a lot into like cosmic book news territory, where, or El Mayembe, when he stopped being reliable, it's getting into this territory where things are 1/10 truth and then like 90% speculation, and he purports it as a valid rumor. I mean, a rumor with some credibility behind it. That's just my take on it. I just really feel like the question Ken pointed out was one of my first questions is, really Jeff Johns and Ben Affleck couldn't write a good Batman script? Is that what you're telling me? That then Chris Terrio, the guy who made the movie that everyone's panning, you need him to polish it? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then the idea that, if once Matt Reeves gets his directorial head, he's going to send it to a page one rewrite. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I don't know. That's my take on it. But let's move on to some other aspect of this, because I'm losing steam as far as.
Let's move on to Nightwing here.
Yeah, we're a little over half. So
basically, I think it was the same day we got
Well, hold on, just 1 second, Eric. I don't mean to cut you off, but tell you what, so before we move on, I want each of us to take and say what do they think going forward is their primary concern. Keep it short, but primary concern. Are you as concerned as some of the rumor milling should indicate that maybe people should be about this movie, or where do you think it's going forward? Eric, what's your take on that?
Well, I have concern because I don't want to use the words history's on my side, because, like I said, I want these movies to happen. So technically history's against me. But like we always make the distinction on this show, like people always say DC. It's important to remember there's differences between DC Comics, Warner Pictures, Warner Television, and Warner Animation. DC Comics doesn't write checks to make movies. They have movies are made based on properties they create. So people always ask, why is DC do fine in comics, animation, and TV? But their films don't always satisfy that. That's because there's a difference in how everything is handled. And I like I said, I'm going to remain concerned until cameras actually start rolling. But I'm genuinely pulling for this movie. Like I said, Batman's my favorite character. It has Deathstroke. It's just, with this stuff and the Flash, and it is kind of questionable why we're 9 months away from Justice League and we have no trailer. But if we want to do some conversion, like for example, when Chris Nolan's Dark Knight movies would drop in July, trailer 1 normally wouldn't hit until December, and they would normally, as you may remember, they might put it like, I think it was with the IMAX release of I Am Legend. They had like the first 5 minutes of The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's bank robbery scene. They would show that, and then you had a trailer, and then I don't remember which movie The Dark Knight Rises was with. It was a December release, but they had like a scene from The Dark Knight Rises, and then they rolled out the trailer. So we are kind of now getting within the time frame where they should be dropping a trailer, but I'm just wondering if they're going to kind of hold off, because I'm also not willing to rule out Affleck jumping ship entirely, because, you know, he does not want to relive those experiences from Daredevil and Geely. And he's kind of already, you had to know he wasn't thrilled with the reaction to Batman versus Superman.
I'd have to argue that possibly it's worse. It's possibly worse because he was Batman, not that he was Daredevil, you know, someone that, you know, nobody was really paying much attention to, but it's Batman. And the fact that that movie critically got hammered worse than I think Daredevil did, I think has probably soured him on the project as well.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Batman is a bigger deal, but it's, you know, he has a career to think about. He has to put food on the table. I think he has kids. I mean, I don't follow celebrities' personal lives, but I mean, he has himself and others to think about, and we know he genuinely does love Batman. But if Justice League underperforms, I don't think he's going to stick around. And, you know, people make the argument, you know, if it doesn't make $1 billion, that's not underperforming, because, you know, Batman versus Superman made 800 some million dollars, so it was a runaway hit. Sorry, no, it wasn't. A movie with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman should have cleared $1 billion easily. And the fact that it didn't, okay, yeah, it made 800 some million dollars. Most of that was within the first 2 weeks, and then it sank like a stone. I'm just speaking objectively here. As someone who liked the movie, I admit it didn't do well. And, you know, people say, oh, the first 3 DC movies made more than the first 3 Marvel movies. It's like, yeah, congratulations. A movie featuring the Trinity for the first time beat Iron Man 1, his first cinematic outing. Yeah, it did. But Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy made more than Superman. And why is that happening? And it's funny when you count the first 3 DC movies, it's like you're kind of doing you're revisionizing history, because I could throw it at you and say, okay, so Superman and the Mole Men, Batman 66, and Superman the movie made more than Iron Man 1. And okay, yeah, if you're talking the first 3 DC films, yeah, I'm going to take you literally here, because Batman and Superman are already, they've been established on the big screen since, okay, first in live action with Batman in 1943, but the first big screen appearance of Superman was an animation with the Fleischer serials in 1942. So these men are nothing new to cinemas. So to say their first movies, no, they're not. But anyway, I've pretty much said my piece on this. So
let me say this: how awesome is Batman versus Superman, right? And I'm approaching it from this standpoint. Here we are; it's damn near a year later, right? We're still talking about this film in the measure of the disappointment that it is, but also it has the power to override any current topic. It always ends up going back to it, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, weren't we supposed to be talking about the Nightwing announcement, and we started talking about Batman versus Superman again?
Well, I wanted to get your take on Eric, a little bit derailed, but I wanted to get your take on what your final thoughts on your feelings for going forward with the Batman. Does the speculation put you in gravest concern? But you are correct. You are absolutely correct. We always seem to come back to Batman versus Superman. I mean, I will say this. I mean, it kind of happened a little bit with Man of Steel, which was another film that I liked, and it wasn't critically loved.
I liked it too, by the way.
It wasn't.
I really did. I liked it.
It wasn't panned nearly as much as Batman versus Superman critically, but that was one of the, you had a lot of people talking about it. Comic fans. It's like, well, should Superman have killed? Was there too much destruction? And these were things that people were literally talking about right up until Batman versus Superman came out. So
and,
I
to your point, I was going to say is if to the answer to that question, should Superman have killed narratively in the story? It made complete sense. I had no problem
in the story. He had to. Should Superman?
He had to do it.
Am I Mark Wade sitting back and screaming at the screen that no, this shouldn't have happened.
No, he shouldn't kill.
I was
thought it was
absolutely
ridiculous.
Shocked. Like it's so funny because I so did not see it coming that when it happened, I was like, what? Like he just killed him. So anyway, but yeah, Batman versus Superman had the same effect that I think Man of Steel had. I think that a truly as they like to call them a truly controversial film will keep people talking about it for a long period of time. And I mean, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but one that's really divisive, like Batman versus Superman, was a lot less divisive. People seem to like it less than they liked it, but okay. So we can move on to Nightwing. Final take on the Batman. Where's it going from here? Is the house of Harry Potter falling into shambles with the DCEU? What's your
Remains
take?
To be seen. Remains to be seen.
All right. So my take is I think that like I said, I will try not to reiterate too much of what I've said prior, but I think that some of the drama is overwrought. I think that it is being driven a little bit by a news media that loves controversy and loves to give people bad news. It just, it sells more papers, as they say. Disaster on train disaster on bridge sells more papers than stock market up 20 points. Like, it's just the nature of the beast. So I think that a lot of the drama has been overblown. I think that the Matt Reeves thing is probably something that happened that was probably a much more common industry occurrence than we think or give credit to. It probably gives credit more to the idea of Ken saying the guy probably wanted some more money. It also could give credit to the idea of Eric saying the guy wanted a little bit more directorial or creative control. But the fact that he was basically back and saying and confirmed within a week lets me think that it was probably just some industry stuff, some standard industry stuff. People really overblew it. I think that there are some concerns, but the idea of will the Batman happen? Absolutely. I have almost no question that it will happen. Will the DCEU in its entirety, as is planned right now, pan out? That definitely remains to be seen. There's been early talk of Wonder Woman being very good, but there was early talk about Batman versus Superman being very good. Now, again, I liked the film quite a bit, but there is a dichotomy between being well-liked by fans, being well-liked by critics. Guess what? The Transformers movie, they did not need a single critic to like those films to make a shit ton of money. But that doesn't make them good films. And especially the Transformers fans, it doesn't make them beloved as a beloved addition to the long history existence of the Transformers characters. I hope that Batman versus Superman will be a little bit more well received in the future. I think that it will be. I think that when people kind of get over and and kind of the fact that it was not a critical darling, like who gives a shit, dwindles into the history books. I think people will go, I watched the ultimate cut. Like I wanted to sit down and go through some of the early films before the next one came out. And yeah, there's problems, but I like that film. I feel like people will go lean a little bit more that way than they do now. But I could be wrong. But I think that going forward, I think that things are looking good with the Batman, questionable with the DCEU as a whole. But Nightwing, Eric,
Yeah,
take it away.
That's as good of a spot to segue to Nightwing, because I really think that WB's calling some audibles here, and they're shifting to making this more of a Batman-centric DC extended universe, which I'm not going to complain about because I like these characters. But
that would really piss me off.
We do need a chance for, you know, the Flash, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern Corps to thrive. But okay, the fact that a Nightwing movie is long overdue, and any studio is going to call audibles when one movie is successful. Like an Ant-Man sequel was nowhere on Marvel's extended slate, and then Ant-Man made a decent amount of money, so it's like, okay, we're going to shift a few movies around, and we're putting out Ant-Man the Wasp in 2018, and that's what they did. So, you know, Suicide Squad was successful financially, and that was the big key there. And yes, technically it made less than Batman versus Superman, but Suicide Squad was a property that came out of nowhere and was a big marketing monster. That Harley Quinn was very popular. So it's no secret why Harley Quinn is getting a spin-off movie, which we know to be Gotham City Sirens, before Suicide Squad 2 even gets here. Thus, you know, Gotham City Sirens happens with David Ayer. Harley Quinn's more prioritized, which I don't mind, because I think I said on a previous episode, although I like Suicide Squad, I would rather see a movie centered on Harley Quinn. But when it comes to Nightwing, it was like probably like an hour after the Matt Reeves news broke that Chris McKay, director of the Lego Batman movie, has been tapped to direct Nightwing. We've got no release date, just like how we have no projected release date from Gotham City Sirens, but we assume it'll get here before 2020. And I don't believe there was a screenwriter named in Gotham City Sirens. Has a screenwriter whose name escapes me at the moment. But it's also, you know, it could be argued that if the Batman's taking a little bit of time, they have this backup plan with Nightwing that you could put forth. And with Nightwing, you could easily have someone like the Riddler be the villain. And I guess that's the beauty or detriment, which Kenshiro might get into. But, you know, Josh knows Nightwing is on a very short list of movies I want to see in my lifetime. And they could probably do some flashbacks, because that's a common complaint right now. They haven't established Dick Grayson in the DCEU, and he's already getting his own solo film. You know, Warner Brothers keeps getting ahead of themselves, but you know, Nightwing. I think the important thing is here with Chris McKay. Granted, he knows he's going to be making a different movie than Lego Batman, but don't make this the same tone. Nightwing can crack jokes. We know that. But he's going to be the light in the darkness. The movie as a whole, I think, needs to be dark. You know, tone, the visuals, the villains. But Nightwing, you have to find that balance between the dark and the light, which is what makes it so different from making a Batman movie. But I don't know if anyone's brought up this point yet, but it also gets into the same problem that WB gets with. They don't seek out other filmmakers like Disney and Fox do. I mean, I know there are people who are going to fling copious amounts of poo at Fox, but the fact is, okay, yes, they got Bryan Singer to direct more than one movie, but they also know to go out and get James Mangold and other people, Vaughn, for projects. If WB has a hit or even a modicum of success with one person, they're going to get them to do as many projects as possible. Like, okay, Zack Snyder, Watchmen was an awesome movie, I think, but it wasn't a hit, which is why Warner Brothers wasn't too keen on doing R-rated superhero films for a while. But they tapped him to do Man of Steel, and Man of Steel was mixed. So then they have him do Batman versus Superman, which, you know, logically a sequel to Man of Steel. He's the first person you expect, but Batman versus Superman doesn't meet expectations. They already committed to him doing Justice League, so they couldn't cancel a movie that was about to shoot just as Batman versus Superman started. That was kind of poor planning on their part. But they stepped in and took some creative control away from him, yada, yada, yada. We don't expect Zack Snyder to be doing another movie, but they also keep going to David Goyer, who the fan base is mixed on. Now, Chris Terrio rewrote his script for Batman versus Superman. And none of us thought David Goyer would be coming back because he wasn't tapped to do any film, you know, coming down the line after Batman versus Superman. But then they tap him to do Green Lantern Corps, which we don't know how familiar with those characters he is. But, you know, it's like they kept trying to get Chris Nolan to come back after the Dark Knight trilogy, and he was done. And he's had a few producer credits since, and helped out with the story on Man of Steel. But, you know, Nolan's pretty much done. But that's the thing, okay, Lego Batman, that's a hit. So we're going to have this guy direct Nightwing. And I think you see where I'm getting at with these things. You know, David Ayer, okay, granted, it made sense since he already directed Harley Quinn. But that's the thing. You need to start, okay, they have James Wan, who I think will probably do a good job with Aquaman. But start putting out other feelers to other filmmakers in Hollywood. And that the fact that there's a bit of turmoil behind the scenes, we can't deny there's a multitude of problems behind the Flash production. That might be turning off certain filmmakers, but still put the feelers out there. You know, get people who might be the next director coming up, because, I mean, look at the Russos. Did they really have any big screen directorial experience before they did Winter Soldier and Civil War? No, but they knocked it out of the damn park, and Disney gave them the keys to the kingdom with 2 Avengers movies coming up. You need to be able to take those chances. Like, help me, is his name Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool? I think that was his first movie. Before then, he was just, a visual effects supervisor or something. So you've got to be able to be willing to reach out. Like, they're also overextending Andrew Kreisberg, Mark Guggenheim, and Greg Berlanti when it comes to the TV side of things over there on the CW. With those guys, you know, it's like, yeah, they're knocking out of the park over on the CW, but how thinly can you spread these guys? But I'm hoping for the best with Nightwing, because this is a movie I don't want them to screw up. We know nothing other than, you know, the movie's tapped. They have a director. I mean, but we still don't, again, I'll believe it when cameras start rolling. And before I pass it over to Kenshiro, I will just say that there's been talk recently, you know, Jared Padalecki would like to play Nightwing. Josh knows I've been saying this for 10 years, that Jared Padalecki should play Nightwing. And more recently, I've, like, you know, is he getting too old for a role? But if Batman's 45, Nightwing could be in his 30s. It's just the sense of you have to shoot around his supernatural schedule. That's why Jensen Ackles could never do Resident Evil movies. I believe he was on a short list to play Captain America when, you know, the first Avenger was being cast, but he couldn't do it because of Supernatural. You would have to shoot Nightwing in the off season, which is kind of funny because Jensen Ackles has voiced the Red Hood. People were like, well, if you get Jared as Nightwing, get Jensen to do Red Hood. And I fully agree with that. It's like, why not? Which is also funny because Mark Sheppard, who plays Crowley on Supernatural, is my top pick for the Penguin. I mean, his voice is so similar to Nolan North's in the Arkham games. And, you know, with a little, you know, bit of makeup and some crappy costuming, the guy would be an awesome Penguin. So I'm like, hey, let's just turn, you know, Nightwing into a Supernatural reunion. But, you know, my hopes are there. So, I mean, with not much known about this project, we're trying to talk as much as we can, but Ken Shiro is about to say, it's one more Batman movie, and he's
Ken's ready to pour his poison on it.
Well, I think you would thoroughly enjoy a Nightwing movie done right, but your concerns about that this Batman reliance are warranted. So go.
Oh, why? Thank you. I appreciate you for validating my my obvious point. I mean, come on, man. Now look, let me start off by saying a Nightwing movie will be freaking awesome. Because I've always loved Richard Dick Grayson as Robin. And I thought, as far as character development goes, he might be possibly the best one in the entire DC universe, just because we saw this guy grow up. He literally grew up from a kid, to a teenager, to a leader of the Teen Titans, to his own superhero role, and to becoming on par with absolutely one of the best and brightest heroes of the DC universe. How can you not like a guy like that? By the contrast between him and Batman, whereas Dick Grayson is literally the light in Batman's shadow. That's absolutely right on point. But as Eric alluded to, this brings up the whole other thing. What I was saying, they have a Batman problem. Now, are they, shifting gears because they're skittish about the reception that some of the other characters might get? Maybe, but here's my thing. You gotta stick to your guns. You got to stick to your guns when you're developing things, because otherwise, if you just keep going back to that same old well, eventually, even though that well is Batman, that well's got to run dry. People have got to be saying, it's always Batman. Is Batman as Batman as Batman is Batman at, we're tired. Is this all DC's got? Like, who cares about these other heroes? We want to see Batman. Now, what made Young Justice so good? Because it wasn't necessarily centered around any Batman-centric heroes. It was about it was about the teen sidekicks. Who was the standout characters in that? It was Aqualad, it was Kid Flash, it was Artemis. None of those are Batman-centric heroes. They were the standouts. I mean, it was Superboy too, and Miss Martian. And you can make the argument, yeah, Batman. I mean, Robin in there was cool, and even when Robin became Nightwing, but it was like the other characters in that show were written so well, were developed so well that they were the standouts in the show. That shows you what people with the right talent, with the right love of the DC lore can do to showcase that, yes, DC has a whole lot more than just Batman. But we've got like Eric said, Harley Quinn was received really well. I liked Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad. Hey, people liked Harley Quinn. Let's give her more Harley Quinn. Let's do the Gotham City Sirens and do it with Poison Ivy and Catwoman. Who are they? They're two Batman villains. I'm sorry, but it's always leading back to Batman. They've got to get past this to where they're developing some of their B-list, C-list heroes and turning them into A-list stars. Like, I hate doing this, but who in the fuck knew about a talking raccoon, a walking tree, and somewhat the most dangerous woman in the galaxy? Who knew about them before Guardians of the Galaxy came out? That weren't hardcore comic book fans? Yeah, nobody,
absolutely
nobody. But Marvel stuck to their guns. I mean, it was a huge risk to put them out there. It was a huge risk to put to put Ant-Man out there. It was a huge risk to put Doctor Strange out there. They all worked. Now, you can make the argument that Doctor Strange and Ant-Man are a result of previous Marvel successes, and I would buy that. I would absolutely buy that. Because Marvel proven themselves that they can take obscure characters and make them into household names. Okay, great. Why in the hell can't DC seem to do that? Excuse me. I shouldn't even say DC because that's slandering their name. Why in the hell can't Warner Brothers do that? That's my problem. Why can't they show that same type of belief in what they have to turn these people into household names? It's like they are so stuck on Batman they don't know how to get away from him because he's such an easy moneymaker. But you got to get away from that, because at some point that well is going to run dry. People are going to get so bored. I mean, you can make the argument that the reason why Marvel is so successful is because they're so diverse, because they have more to offer than just one hero all the time. They've got Captain America, they've got Black Widow, they got the Hulk, they got Iron Man. They got Iron Man, they've got Thor, they've got Hawkeye, they got Black Panther, they've got, all these, they got the Falcon, they've got Scarlet Witch, they had Quicksilver until they killed him. They've got all these characters that different people can gravitate towards. But if you want DC, all you seem to get is Batman. It's on TV, with the exception of The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and the DC. That's why they're doing so well on the CW, is because it's more diverse, in my opinion. But you got Gotham on TV. You got Batman ruling most of the animation projects that DC puts out. You've got Batman seemingly taking over the movies now too. It's a problem. That's just me. That's just me. That's all I gotta say.
So that being said, what is your take on Nightwing?
I'm sorry. Okay, felt good to get that out. Okay, my feelings on Nightwing. Honestly, I think Nightwing deserved. I would like to have had more concrete details before they announced Nightwing. It seemed like they were doing this just to drum up some excitement, some interest, because they've been taking a few hits on the chin with the Flash director dropping out again, and with Ben Affleck dropping out himself. They were kind of in a really weakened position, so they had to drum up some kind of goodwill towards the DCEU. I would much rather them have waited. I can lament till the cows come home them doing another Batman film, but I'd be remiss in saying that a Nightwing film wouldn't be incredible. I do have to wonder how they're going to get around the whole, what he's been up to. Obviously, they're not going to touch on the Teen Titans in his film. He's basically going to just become another hero stepping out of Batman's shadow. They're obviously not going to touch on the Kryptonian origins of the Nightwing name. They're obviously not going to go into the whole Barbara Gordon romance thing, because we don't even know if she exists. So it remains to be seen, but I'm excited about a Nightwing film. I am, because I love Nightwing. Nightwing is one of my favorite characters in DC.
You touched on some really important stuff, and I think it's stuff that's valid. I am concerned about the Batman problem. I mean, granted, because I like the character, I love the character even. I don't see it as much of a problem with the character necessarily. I see it as a problem with the WB. I don't see it as a problem with Batman. I don't even necessarily see it as necessarily a problem for the DCEU or with the DCEU. But it's a Warner Brothers problem, because they think about it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Disney is thinking about it like a business. Absolutely. Before that, Marvel Studios was thinking about it like a business, but they wanted to do both. They wanted to both be a successful business and successfully tell the stories of these characters. And I think that that's where Warner Brothers is failing a little bit more, whereas, I'm still mad about the soft loss of Superman to Batman. I think it's absurd. I think that,
my man, yes.
You ask any person who doesn't watch a movie, read a comic book, but they know the characters of Superman and Batman, and it's like, well, that's a dumb question. Obviously, Superman would kill Batman immediately. Yeah, that's the answer. But and then you get into the but Superman doesn't kill, and Batman has kryptonite. So Superman, he basically mitigates his own loss. Okay, I can understand that, but come on, people, you make it a draw. You make it a draw. It's that simple. You bring them to a point where Batman almost kills Superman. Superman gets to the point where he's almost going to kill Batman, says he's never going to do it again. Lois Lane breaks it up and says, yeah, they kidnapped his mother. Whatever. you make it a draw. That way, you do the classic answer to the question of who wins in a fight between Superman and Batman. Neither of us. Anyway, that being said, yeah, it is indicative of that same Batman problem. Oh no, Batman's got to get the clean win. He hits No, it's like, he hits Superman with the chair while the ref's not looking, and then pins him for the 1, 2, 3 with the schoolboy roll up.
I like that.
I mean, that's kind of the way I feel about it. It's like, it's like the way I felt when Triple H fought Sting for the first time. You got Sting fighting his first match, and you can't give the guy a win. You give the guy a dirty loss. That's absurd.
Sting was so over the hill at the time, though, man. Come on.
I get it, but what I'm saying that, like, it's like they were so in love with Triple H. He's the Batman of the WWE that you can't even give the cult hero of the fans the win the one time. What would it have cost Triple H? Nothing. It's the same way with Batman. It's like you couldn't give Superman the win or even the draw because you want to make it, stated that these two shouldn't and won't fight. And anyway, that being said, I think that the so-called Batman problem could be a little bit more evident. But then I look at some of the animated films that they've put out, and I'm like, okay, if it takes them shoehorning Batman in a little bit to get a Justice League Dark made, if it takes them to bring in and make it a so-called Justice League movie to get Throne of Atlantis made and really showcase Aquaman, that is a lot more tenable to me than making everything Batman centric. But
Josh, I'm sorry, that's a cop out. That's a cop out, man. That's a cop out. Literally,
I agree. I'm saying, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that, like, I don't want that in my films, but I mean, in an animated market, you're literally doing direct to DVD sales or direct to digital sales. The marketing is significantly less. This isn't a live action film. I think that the math is a little bit different there. The metrics are a little bit different there. I do think that, like you stated, with Marvel taking the risks, I think that DC Warner Brothers could do the same and maybe should do the same. Because, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that Batman's going to be coming to the forefront. Obviously, in Wonder Woman, he's not alive yet. He's not going to be coming into the forefront in Aquaman, I would hope. So you've got a couple films that are in no way Batman related. But I don't think that with Nightwing that it's necessarily a bad thing. Batman does have a huge universe all to his own. Likewise, Superman does. But they're not going to probably make a Supergirl film ever in this universe.
No.
It's not going to happen. And if they did, it would be absolutely shocking. It'd be absolutely shocking. It'd be more shocking than a Nightwing film. But what's that?
What was that?
There was a Supergirl movie like 30 years ago.
Yeah, but come on, man.
I'm saying they're not going to make a Supergirl movie in the DCEU. They're not going to be like, well, wait, is she alive? Are they going to do the same thing that they did with the Rebirth, where like Supergirl has been living and just held her powers? It's kind of the retconning that they did with Batman being in Metropolis on the day of the attack. It's kind of the same thing. If they did that with Supergirl, it's like, okay, so where was Supergirl when the Kryptonians came? Where was Supergirl when the Earth? So they might have to do if they ever did that, they might have to do the Rocket origin, where she just crash lands on Earth, and it's like, what the hell? There's Supergirl. That will never happen. But a Nightwing is way more plausible. But I don't necessarily think that that's a horrible thing to make Nightwing, because not just his rogues gallery is gigantic, but even his heroes gallery is gigantic. I mean, you've got all of the Robins and all of the tertiary characters that have developed because of Batman. I think that it's a good and a bad thing, but I would agree with you that it's not necessarily more of a bad thing, but I think that they need to get away from it. Otherwise, they're just going to be pigeonholing themselves into this endless Batman well that they keep trying to tap until it runs dry. Yeah,
that's all I've been saying, man. That's all I've been saying.
Did you just say they're trying to tap Batman well?
Batman well. Yeah, Batman's well. All right, so we've gone over quite a bit. Let's wrap it up. Oh, you know what, by the way, one thing, apparently the accountant script writer, which is Bill Dubuque, he was also supposedly tapped for the Nightwing movie. I don't know if you've seen The Accountant, but that was a really, really solid flick. And that script was top notch for sure. And it was dark without being humorless. So I think that would be perfect for a Nightwing if he can keep the same tone of that film even. But okay, Eric, wrapping up, anything else you got to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, with the risk of going to that Batman well, it won't really run dry story wise, but I think what you're going to do is really, the general public at large is eventually going to get sick. Because I mean, what makes movie franchises so special is that you roll out a new installment every 2 to 3 years. We've seen, people at studios pumping out horror movies drive franchises into the ground because eventually, movies like Saw and Paranormal Activity do well for so long. So even if you put out a good sequel, don't misinterpret me by saying there was a good Paranormal Activity sequel, because those movies sucked. And no, I did not stick around to watch all of them. But when you put out one every year, eventually you're going to get a massive financial failure. And over time, you may see Batman movies, Batman spin-offs make less and less money because people won't view them as special anymore. I mean, granted, Age of Ultron, I personally don't think was as good as the first Avengers movie, but logically,
it wasn't.
That movie should have made more than the first, because that's just the nature of sequels. They tend to do more. Maybe one of the reasons it didn't make more is because the luster of the superhero team up it had already been done, which is why I'm not so sure, even if Justice League is the best DC movie possible, if it will be able to touch the first Avengers movie financially. Who knows? Infinity War might not be able to do it. I mean, granted, Infinity War is the culmination of the MCU to this point, but I mean, it's only guys like us that are going to see it that way. To the average moviegoer, it's just another Avengers sequel, if we're going to be quite honest. But that's the thing with
well, yes and no, because at least with this one, you could say now you're bringing in the Guardians of the Galaxy as well. So since it's everybody and everything, you'll kind of get all of them together. I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's just the thing. But
you got a point, Ken, because you got fans of the Guardians of the Galaxy who really don't actually necessarily even care about some of the other
Avengers, exactly,
and vice versa.
Right? But they want to see Rocket and Groot, so they'll come.
Right.
Yeah. So, like I said, it could go anyway financially with Infinity War, but we just got to see it. I think very soon, for the sake of the Batman franchise, whenever Affleck's done, even if he does do a solo film or two, it might be time to get past the whole Bruce Wayne thing. Because I don't necessarily know if you're going to want to do a Dick Grayson as Batman movie, but it's really going to be time to maybe hit the Batman Beyond button. Tell a new story. I mean, you could even have Affleck as old Bruce Wayne, but it's going to be time to give the moviegoers something new. So before we truly wrap things up, Kenshiro, any closing words from you?
First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on. It's been fun being able to vent a little bit of my frustration. I don't nearly get to do that enough, even on my own show. Speaking of which, shameless plug, come and check us out on Culture Junkies Live over on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitch this Tuesday, 7:30 or 7 o'clock. We're going to be talking about the future of the X-Men franchise, now that Logan is calling it is going to be the swan song for the original X-Men generation.
And I really need to do your guys' show again soon. It's just going to Tuesdays are a very busy day for me for my editorial duties over at We Got This Covered. Sorry.
Shameless plug. Hashtag shameless plug.
A bit low there. I'm stuttering. But yeah, it's maybe on an upcoming week when the DC TV shows are in reruns or whatever, because I have to watch them so I can do the roundups later in the week. I'm overdue for a Culture Junkies live return. But plugs here for all the latest DC news and all forms of media. Check out DCComicsNews.com. And as I said, although unrelated to this podcast, please check out WeGotThisCovered.com for just pretty much any kind of entertainment news you're looking for. Check out our friends over at CultureJunkies.net. They've recently done a revamp of their site. It's looking pretty sharp. Check out our blog site for our backlog of podcasts and other miscellany at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/podcasts for all seasons. So hopefully we're back soon with a new episode, kick around some ideas, maybe some shocking paternity tests. So until next time, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Yeah, appreciate everyone for watching. I again appreciate Ken Shiro for joining us, and definitely check out their show. It was a pretty big episode 1 of our new season here, so hopefully we got a lot more big, good things coming in the future. But thanks for checking us out. Have a good day.